Good morning everybody, my name's Matt Pallant and I'm one of the BDMs here at Man and Machine. For those who've never met me before, I'm responsible for helping product manufacturers bring their products to market faster, increase productivity and help them be as profitable as possible. Today's session is about how to increase collaboration in the new world externally. Before we kick off the session, I'd like to ask you all a question. And that question is, how do you currently use visualizations? Is it A, we don't currently do any visualization, B, only for internal design reviews, C, we send visualizations externally, or D, on our website to sell products? Now I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to vote and then we'll reveal the outcome shortly. Okay, so I believe the poll is in and let's take a look and see how many of you use visualization. So, actually looks like many of you don't currently use any visualization at the moment, which is quite surprising. And only a minority of you use it for a website to sell your products, which is really interesting. So hopefully by the end of this session, you can see a benefit in how visualization can help your design processes. So a typical traditional way a product manufacturer would start a product life cycle would be firstly to make a conceptual design of that product, carry out market research and development, and then go on to make a physical prototype. Then you commit to production and cross your fingers that it's going to do well in the marketplace. While this traditional method works for many manufacturers today, there are still, of course, some big disadvantages with this, such as the time it takes to get products to market, and the cost incurred by making expensive modifications to prototypes, and of course resource. Research suggests that manufacturers go through the prototype process 6 times on average before finding a product they can take to market. Of course, we know the world is a changing place, and this is not necessarily how a product lifecycle looks anymore. Today, many product manufacturers are enhancing the latest visualization technology that is available to them, such as Autodesk Inventor, 3ds Max and VRED design. These fantastic applications give product manufacturers the ability to create digital prototypes early on in the design phase so they can gain an insight into how their products will look and perform before production. Conceptual design and market research still takes place, of course. However, using something like VRED design will massively save you time and money on physical prototypes, enabling manufacturers to take more products to market quicker than they ever did before and gain a competitive edge over their competition. To give you a customer example, Royal Enfield, who are one of the world's oldest and most experienced motorcycle manufacturer with over 100 years in production, wants to look at a more cost-effective and efficient way of prototyping compared to the traditional method. And because their customers would always want to change modifications to customised motorcycles, and recognising that the fact that their customers would also want to see the motorcycle before they buy it, Royal Enfield decided to adopt VRED design, which was able to assist with these demands, which in turn helped them get their products to market faster, reduce costs, and increase sales by 6%. So I'm going to play a short video now, a visualization video. It's very short, and it's NISSAN, who's one of the Autodesk customers, and then Chris is going to take over following that.
benefits of the digital help and the vision of Autodesk. It's allowed us to do more with the same amount of people. as a company that has nearly 60 different cars, and we need to be able to work on many of those. With Autodesk as a strategic partner, we don't have to make as many models. At my desk, I can access 60 cars and I can walk and see each one. And this kind of ability to see what is invisible is really a huge savings of time. I don't have to wait a month before I experience a design in reality. And these are the things that Autodesk has brought to us as a strategic partner. Is I literally can see a car in a day that didn't exist yesterday. It's really changed the way we live. Our form of communication is designing. And the more we make our designs real, is the more I understand the dreams and the ambition of all of my design team. So I look at this as a kind of a way to communicate and connect to the creative spirits in the company.
Thank you, Matt. It's nice to see that VRED gets used, from a collaborative point of view, because we often look at it as a tool simply for rendering and for visualizations, but it's easily used as a collaborative tool that we can then take on and hand over files to clients rather than simple still views or perhaps even animations and videos. We can now, utilizing the power of VRED Professional and VRED Go, which you may not have heard of, but VRED Go is built into VRED Professional and allows us to export an exe file. The exe file can then be opened on anyone's desktop without VRED installed or not even having access to a VRED license, and they can open it up, giving them access to a fully fledged and rendered VRED file. We can then use it to build in configurators using things like scene plates, where we can have various options from our product that can then be changed and interacted with by the client. So while this opens up, I'll just give it a second, and there we go, it's opening up. So you can see the interface is very similar to VRED, if you've seen VRED before. If not, I'll be showing you shortly. And if we go and expand the screen, we can see that we have the same product that we have been displaying from the iLogic models and the other sessions that we'll be doing later. And within this model, I've got none of the tabs at the top because it's sort of a VRED light format. But we can go and expand our menu here, which is built from a scene plate within VRED. And I have various options to interact with the model now. So from a client point of view, without doing anything, I can take this model and start interacting with it based on these controls over here. This scene plate can also look however we want it to. It's fully programmable. And if I go and shift through my different cameras, you can see that I get different views of my model. And if I stick to one, I can also have animations built in. So in this one's case, I've got a couple rotations that we can do from our turntable point of view to sort of view the product as it goes through and have, in this case, 3 turns. I can also go and use that same turntable, and if built in, I can have various color demonstrations or material demonstrations within my model. So you'll see on each rotation, it's actually changing the color. And I've also got a 10 rotation that allows it to just rotate while I actually go and manually change through various things. So from the iLogic session, you will have seen that this model is capable of changing the slat angle. So I can go and change the slat angle between 15 degrees or 30 degrees or back again while it's busy rotating. And if I want to change the color of those slats, I simply just change them as I go. So I can dark steel on the panels, go to black or white on the panels, or on the insulation rather, and just start my turntable again. It does look nice while it's turning. And I can just feel around the model and play around with the different configurations, and within or on this could be on your client's desktop or anyone who wants to view it. It's also capable of of virtual reality, so we could be viewing this in virtual reality and actually have interactions with the model. This particular model is not quite fascinating enough for that, I guess. The interactions are better done through a scene plate, which is why I've opted for this. But let's have a look at how we can get to this point and maybe compare some of the differences between using VRED and Inventor and Max. So I'm going to start with showing you a little bit of Inventor. Of course, this model was originally designed in Inventor, and so of course we have the options to use Inventor for rendering, and I'm just going to show you a little bit of how that would look and feel. So going into environments, we can see straight away from the VRED Go that, you know, Inventor is a modeling product. It's built for CAD. It's designed for CAD. So looks wise, we don't really have that original feel of a rendering product and how a visualization product would interact. But if we go and enhance some of the view settings on our Inventor model, perhaps turning on shadows, making our visual style realistic, we could even put on ray tracing once it is on realistic, we can get to a point where our model does look pretty good. It's pretty quick to get to this point. I mean, we're already modeling in Inventor, so to get to a point where we've added materials and added styles, I suppose various appearances within Inventor is pretty easy, and we're probably already there for the most part. So coming into Inventor Studio can take a couple minutes, and we can get to something that's somewhat decent. It's not, you know, the high-end product of or a render quality of, you know, what a professional might do, but for internal collaboration or something like that, it can be ideal to just put out an image. Or in this case, I've actually built up, so if I go to my sorry, not render animation, I go to my render animation timeline, I can go and play through the same turntable that we were seeing in VRED Go earlier. So it can play through, and I can render this, and it'll come out quite nicely. I can add lighting, I can add various studio settings. In this case, I've just opted for a white background for a product demo. Set up cameras, and if I show you camera 1 and I just go to the linked view, we can, you know, move a camera. It's nice and easy to set up these things in Inventor. So pretty quick to do, not the highest in quality. I'll show you a video from Inventor quickly. And that's something that we can get out. And this is, you know, a matter of a couple minutes. It's probably took me about half an hour to set up the model and play with constraints in this case because of Inventor's working. So I used the constraint to drive the rotations, and you get a pretty good result pretty quick. Moving on to Max, if I have a look at my 3ds Max, I've also got the same model once again set up in a very similar situation. Now Max is a lot more involved, and we have to put in a lot more time into building up our materials and getting everything prepared to this point. So this probably took about an hour or two, probably closer to the 2-hour mark to get the model to this point. I've set up materials and I've set up some various things. I've also gone and set a turntable, much like we have now seen in a couple of the other products in Inventor and VRED Go so far, and it looks pretty good. In terms of our actual, you know, in-product visualizations, there's nothing wrong with Max. It generally tends to look a bit more like a CAD product, although of course, you know, many of you will be aware of Max's capabilities in rendering. But I can also go and add in, give me a second, add in a custom viewport, which I'm not finding at this stage. Sorry. Viewports. Oh, sorry. I just want to go and add in a visual effect, high quality. Sorry. So we can also go to a higher quality image within the product, and because of that, we can also view it nicely. But it still looks somewhat like a CAD product. It's not, you know, to be able, or you're not able to interact with the model in a high-end environment and actually see it and view it here. But that's not the advantage of Max. The advantage of Max is your outputs, doing things like still renders and also the capability of animation. So to show you a video from Max, we have something output that looks much like this. It's material capabilities are there. You can change things, you can edit lighting. I haven't done too much of this, like I said, I only spent about an hour and a half or so on the model. But you can get to a nice high-end point within animations, and definitely from a still shot point of view, Max is a great product. Now, both of those are built into the product design collection, VRED being over and above it, or at least an external product that we can purchase. I'm going to jump to VRED and show you why I believe VRED is the product to use when it comes to rendering our items and doing these sort of product configurators built into a visualization package. Firstly, jumping into VRED, I've already shown you the VRED Go file, so you can see now that the difference is that we have all the bars and all the tools that are used to create what we saw in VRED Go. We have the ability to once again look at our scene plate. We can have multiple scene plates built in. If I go and have a look at my scene plate editor, we can quickly switch between different front plates, which I might have different options. I can turn on and off my logos and have all of that built in. I can also change things on the fly and very easily. So for example, a client might come along and ask us, look, can I see that product in gold, for example? So we might want to go and build up a gold material. So I've already got switches built into my materials. So if I go and find, let's say they just wanted to see it on the slats or perhaps on the panels. So I'll start by creating a new material, and I can create something that's, I guess a metallic car paint will do. And all I need to do from here is go and find a color that suits what their needs are. So we're going to go and try and make a gold here. Something around there. So we can start on something like that, and all I'd go and do is drop that material into my switch that's already built in. Now, of course, building this into a scene plate is going to take a lot longer because there's some coding involved in that, but I'll just drop that into my panels, and I now have an option for that metallic car paint. I'm going to quickly go and rename it as gold. Oopsie. Gold. And there we go. The option is there, and straight away I can see that I've got a pretty decent gold coming through onto my model. I might want to change my slats as well. So I can go and add in a material and maybe do something like a plastic from any colors. We can quickly go and get a red, and I can drop that into my slats and add it on, and straight away we've got a red. So configuring or adding new things to the model and being able to manipulate our materials is a very easy thing to do with VRED. A lot of you will have used Showcase in the past and probably would miss it, as I myself do. And VRED very much has that feel of being able to just drag a model out of Inventor, drop it in here, and be able to just start adding various things to it. I also have the capability of turning on things like ray tracing, and ray tracing comes in two parts, where we can actually use a CPU based ray trace or a GPU based ray trace, which is nice, but of course works with specific graphics cards, and you do need the correct drivers, but it does work very well and allows for very smooth ray tracing. If I bundle that with anti-aliasing, we can get a still image on our screen that looks quite high end, just from a point of view of viewing it within the product, within VRED itself. I can switch backgrounds. So if I go to my environments, I don't have another background here, but I could certainly turn off the background to see the product much like we were viewing it in Inventor and in Max for contrast. I can change my materials as I go. Now, with anti-aliasing, or with the anti-aliasing, it's doing what's much like the ray tracing would have done in Inventor. If we change anything, it does, of course, start again. with VRED, it's also very easy to set up things like substance materials. So we can go and have substance materials that allow us to go and have textured materials that we can change and iterate on. So a substance material would contain multiple different combinations, so much like a configurator of a material in itself. So you can see as I change these seeds, I get a different material effect just running through it on my pine. So that's quite useful to use the substance. As I mentioned with our scene plates, we can configure it fully. So if we wanted a different scene plate, we can go and add a different one and perhaps have different features within it, or have different combinations for different product lines. You can also build them in line, and you can also keep them consistent. So all you need to do is quickly change a few fields within that scene plate to then accommodate within our with whatever changes we want to add for that client to view. So for example, I could quickly go and add something like panel color from white to dark steel to gold, if that's what my client wanted to see. Exporting to VRED Go, I'm just going to turn off my anti-aliasing and ray tracing for now. You can see my model becomes a little bit dull again, and much like CAD. So if I wanted to then go and send this out to VRED Go, it's as simple as an export. I have the option to change whether the file expires or not, so a client wouldn't have endless access to it. You can actually stipulate how long they have access to that configurator for, and I can also choose whether it's VR or desktop, which is quite niche in itself. So I wanted to also show you that VRED isn't simply for product configuration and product design. We can also look at a scene or look at something much larger in terms of models. So we'll be looking at this model on the BIM export side a bit later on. But if I go and switch over, I've got it already imported. We can look at, in this case, our whole scene with all of our slats. Looks like my models. I'm just going to switch off my ground plane quickly. Sorry, one small screen here. So on my studio, let's find the ground plane, shadow plane there. Let's just turn off my background for now. Alright, cool. So we can see our model has come in straight. This is from Inventor, although it's still using the same Revit model that we'll be collaborating with, and we have been earlier on this morning, as I showed you in my Vault session. And we can take this and quickly add in our own materials. And I just wanted to show you how quick it can be to just drag and drop an Inventor model into VRED and get it to look into something that may be decent, that we may be able to go and output. So much like we would have done in Showcase in the past. So starting with some quick materials, I can go and find the materials that are already there. Unfortunately, they're not often well named, but I can, if I wanted to go and change these green panels, simply picking what I can see as green, and I can go and say select nodes, and I've already imported some of the materials that we were seeing in my previous one, so I can go and say orange, right click and say apply to selected nodes, and all those green panels are changed to orange. So another option, I can shift click, right click, or by shift clicking on something I can see what material that is currently in. So I can see that my brackets in this case are on this surface, unfortunately not named, but a grey surface at this stage. So I'll just once again select nodes and go and apply my supports material to that. I can see that it changes those. So quite quickly I can add in different materials. Now the actual building, I might just want it to be a plain white. So in this case I'm going to just drag and drop my white onto the building. Looks like it was already that white, so that's fine. Or it's a similar shade of white anyway. So yeah, once we've got a couple materials, and I'm not going to go and set up all the materials required for this. I have to excuse my orbiting. Jumping between the multiple products can be frustrating sometimes, but you do get used to it at times. I'm missing my 3D mouse as well. But we can go and set up views. So if I wanted to build in a camera or just to set a viewpoint, I can simply go to my cameras and right click, create a viewpoint, simply from here. It's now, I'll just drag and drop it down below, and there's my new viewpoint. So I could just call this, I don't know, a front left view. Now I have a viewpoint ready to jump back to whenever I want. So if I go back to front, I can come back to that viewpoint as simply as that. If I wanted to adjust it, translation and rotation, I can do more accurate movements between it, or I suppose moving the actual triad of that view and rotating it as I need. And if I go and quickly add in, well, actually before I add on the CPU, the last thing we would need, so obviously I haven't gone and added all the materials here, it's not as quick as the 5-minute demonstration you're getting here, but we can then just go and use our bake materials, and I'll keep it to a lowish quality in this case because it's a large model. We'll try for medium. And if I bake my ambient occlusion, and just double check what I have selected here, and just break down my model nodes. Oh, wow, big model. So if I scroll up, just select root and then calculate all on that. May take a fair bit longer than it just did. Hopefully not too long. So by baking in our lights and shadows, we can actually get the model to sort of contain a lot of its detail within itself. And the benefit of that is quicker render times and, of course, better visualization while we're working with the model. So there we go. You can see that once the ambient occlusion is added on, and I don't have any lights or anything fancy here, once it's added, you can definitely see how, you know, the material looks a lot better. I can do the same with my lights and shadows. So I've selected the root, so it's pretty much combining everything within this scene and just baking it all in to the material. So once I've done my lights and shadows, you should be able to see a couple of the shadows appearing onto the model. Just give it a second to iterate and do its thing. Oh, of course, live demonstration, it would go a bit slower. The demo ghost, as Frank will possibly tell you about later if you're lucky. Oh, we have a demo ghost for sure. So let's just go back and do my. I shouldn't have mentioned it. As soon as you mention the demo ghost, it comes up and gets you. So I'll get my ambient occlusion again. Should have actually done the lights and shadows first normally, and then your ambient occlusion. Come on, don't fail me now. There we go, it's back. Thank goodness. Right, so we can go ahead and start outputting various things from here. So we can add our CPU ray tracing and our anti-aliasing, and we can see that our model's starting to. Oh, once again, the lack of light, so I'll just take off my anti-aliasing. Right. So CPU. There we go. So with my ray tracing on, my anti-aliasing seems to not be liking those shadows. It's because of all the imported materials that I've left on, and I've not created actual VRED materials to replace them with. So that's why the lighting's not working too well on that. But we live and learn. You should normally add that, and normally we would take the time, but in my short demonstration I unfortunately don't have time to show you all of that. But to simply go and render, our rendering process is as simple as going to render settings and acquiring an image. If we wanted to have an animation, we could do various clips that we've done. So if we have any animations, like in my previous model, I've got the turntables or something like that with the colors flipping and something, I can have variations on it. What's unique to VRED in terms of outputting multiple files, so in the past I've dealt with clients that need to have a certain product that's very similar but has multiple different variations of color schemes and materials and things that come out in that product. And to be able to create that product and actually physically take a photograph of each one and then upload that to your website can be quite strenuous and take quite a lot of time, of course, and you have to make all of those products in the first place, which at the end of the day might not even sell. So what we can do with VRED that's quite unique is that we can go and add variant sets. So like I was showing you in my previous model, where we have all these different variance sets for perhaps colors, or perhaps views, or perhaps different material schemes, maybe lighting styles, rotations of the model, rotations of the camera, any of those things that we've set up as variance sets, we can go and set into our render process. And with that, we can then go and run through all those different variants within one render shot, rather than having to set one up and go, and set one up and go. And that's where I also feel that VRED 1 saves us time, but helps us compared to some of the other two products that we've looked at, Max and Inventor, where we would have had to go and set those up as one and then run the render, set it up as one and run the render, or maybe do an animation where it came out with still shots as something was going through, but even that would not allow us to get all the different variants that you've seen here within VRED. So definitely a winner for helping us win more business, and as well as saving us a bit of time and money in terms of not needing to create products if you are going to create photos. So thank you very much for having a look at VRED, and I'll hand back over to Matt now, just to close the session.
Chris, that was great. Could you just maybe do a couple more minutes, maybe show a slightly different model, something a little bit sexier? Matt's just finishing off a couple of bits, so yeah, we're a bit ahead of schedule, so if you can just show something else, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Sorry to drop you in it.
No problem, sorry. Yeah, alright, cool. So, I'm going to go find a quick model then. Sorry, I apologize, this is slightly unexpected, but I'll find something for us. So I go find my VRED folder. Let's go and open up nothing like a car model to finish off a VRED demo. Always something good to look at, and something nice to view. Sorry, while it loads, we'll just have to take a couple seconds. I'll play around with this model and just check it out while we wait. So, unfortunately, sorry, any second now. I dropped that, so we'll wait for it to load up in the background. It is a slightly large model. Not prepared for that, but we'll see what we can do. So, playing around with materials, you know, if we wanted to make a switch of something, so just to show you a little something in between, making a switch is as simple as clicking on something or right clicking on something rather, and going and saying convert, create material, and we can go and make a switch. And once you've got a switch, dragging and dropping that actual switch onto an item will then allow us to then go and drag and drop materials onto the switch, so that we can jump between materials pretty quickly. I think my model, I'm done rambling, my model is open. So here we go. I've got a nice model of this Audi R8 here, and you can see it's quite nicely refined. Because it's got the differences being that we actually have it in a nice scene with a different background and all the rest. So it's not got a nice scene plate, unfortunately, but I can go and show you some of the other things that we can do with VRED. So of course, if we do have a mechanical model that has some sort of motion involved, and this one in this case has a little clip we can play of perhaps the boot opening, not the fanciest one for motion blur, which I would like to show you. So if I just go and play it, we can see the reverse there, or perhaps playing it forward, we can see it driving forward a little bit. Now if I stop that somewhere in between, sort of in the middle of the motion, and for freeze frames or for still images, we can enable things like motion blur. So I can go and pop on anti-aliasing, and we can see that because I've got motion blur set, we can see that we're actually getting some blur out of the movement. So, you know, if your vehicle was speeding off, or any product really, I could have done it on my turntable, but it wouldn't have been as fascinating having a turntable blur as it goes around. But something like this, definitely we can get a high-end effect. And as soon as I sort of drop it, so without anti-aliasing buffered yet, we don't get that motion blur. We can set camera speeds for that motion blur. So if I go and have a look at my perspective here, we can see, sorry, I would have had motion blur enabled, so we can change our shutter speed, which will obviously change the amount of motion blur that we get. So if I go a bit higher, we can see a little bit less, and lower, quite a lot more blur. So we can get a much crisper motion blur. Of course, we don't want to go so extreme, so we'll probably go a bit higher, and hopefully with a higher speed we'll capture the things that are moving faster in that scene. So perhaps more on the wheels, we can see more on the wheels rather than on our actual car. So yeah, thank you for giving me a little extra time there, Rob, and throwing me under the bus. But I hope it's a little bit of something to fill the gap. I still got a little more time, so I'll carry on. So if we wanted to get a detailed shot of maybe our actual wheel here, we can then go in and maybe zoom in and just see how that then presents itself. So maybe using our shutter speed, we can go up to something a little more custom, something in between, because I'm finding between the 64 and the 120 we're not quite getting there. Let's go to about 90 and see where we are. So we can see that we get a nice wheel motion blur with a bit of more crispness around our actual vehicle. It was 125, so we'll go to, let's try 105 here and see if we can refine that a bit more. Yeah, so playing around with motion blur is probably one of the more fun things I like to do in VRED, but of course not every model presents an opportunity for it, so there we go. I hope that Matt's now ready for me. Yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks very much for that, Chris. That was very interesting. I hope you all found it beneficial as well, and can see how something like visualization can massively benefit the design and manufacturing processes within your business. So we're going to end the session on a bit of fun. The fun is basically going to show you 3 pictures, and you need to tell whether they're fake or real. So one of these pictures is a photo, and 2 of them are through visualization. I'm going to give you a few seconds to make your mind up, and I'll reveal which one is the photo and which one's a visualization. So I can reveal that actually the coffee cup was a photo. I hope you all got that right at home. And that's just to end the session. So thank you very much for your time. There should be a question box down below. If there's any questions that you've got, anything that you want to look into a bit further or discuss with myself in terms of visualization solutions, then please feel free to put your questions in, and I'll be happy to answer those.